Good afternoon. Welcome to the Municipal and Traffic Court's 2024 to 2028 Capital Improvement Plan public meeting. The CBC conducts these meetings yearly in advance of the preparation of the 5-year capital plan. The meetings are intended to give the public in advance, notification or ability to review agencies' capital requests, their plans for facility upgrades, and so forth over the coming 5 years, early on in the budget planning process. We've asked all of the agencies that have submitted capital funding requests to go through their capital budget request form, give a brief description of each project, and just allow for any questions or comments that might arise. If we could just start with a round of introductions. I'm Larry Massey, the Deputy Director of City Planning.
Vince Smith, Director of Capital Projects.
Sean Boyce, Project Manager.
Robert Jones, Administrative and Presiding Judge of Municipal Court.
And Monique Warsi, the Judicial Administrator of Municipal and Traffic Court.
Okay, turn it over to Municipal Traffic.
We have 2 projects that we would like to have for consideration. They're pretty straightforward for us. The first one is the community court. As you know, I know Mr. Smith knows, we are planning the renovation of the Municipal Traffic Court, 727 South Broad Street. The design that was done 3-4 years ago was done under the leadership of the presiding judge at that time. So there's been some functional changes over at the courts. One of the items that has been talked about, and now we hope to bring to fruition and fund it, is the community court. Unique, and Judge Jones, would you like to give a brief description of what the community courts would be? It would be located in the basement on the ground level of 727 South Broad.
The community court is a concept that has been introduced and developed throughout the United States and around the world. Our community court will be the first in the state of Louisiana. What community courts are, unlike traditional courts that punish to deter misconduct, community courts try to examine the causes of misconduct and resolve or assist in the resolution of the underlying social problems. So if before me I have a defendant who's been arrested 5 times in the past 18 months for shoplifting, and the merchandise taken is invariably food and products of hygiene, then the question becomes, why does that person have to steal those items? And maybe the better solution, rather than punishing, is to resolve the underlying problem. So we have received an $800,000 grant from the Department of Justice to establish the first community court in the state of Louisiana. The way we envision the court developing is that it will consist of 8 to 10 specialized dockets: a docket for the homeless, a docket for the drug and substance abusers, a docket for the young first offenders, a docket for possibly the victims of human trafficking, so on and so forth. Each docket would be presided over by a judge who has expertise and interest in that arena. The dockets would be smaller. The settings would be more intimate. I've always espoused that a traditional courtroom setting may not be the best environment to adjudicate those kind of cases where we're trying to solve problems. Maybe the judge does not need to be elevated. Maybe he or she does not need to wear a black robe if you're trying to get at underlying problems and solve them. Maybe a setting more like this, where there's a rectangular table, where not only do you have a judge and the defendant, but you've got the prosecutor, the public defender, caseworkers, stakeholders in the community, all in a concerted effort to resolve the problem. So this is unique, this is special, it's cutting edge. And obviously, the key to making it work is that you need support staff. You know, currently, our court has one social worker. Criminal court has 39. But if we're going to do, and we are, establish a community court with 10 specialized dockets, most of which are therapeutic, what I'm going to need is caseworkers, and I'm going to need offices to house them. So, what we're asking for is some slight modifications to the pre-existing plans that were developed 10 years ago, so that we can accommodate this very new effort that we're bringing into the courthouse.
The $800,000 grant, could that be towards personnel or operating?
That is largely, so that's going to pay for the community court director and a project manager with their salaries and benefits. That's the $200,000. All right.
And the first floor, is this also where the there's parking located, the first floor of this building? Would this build out into the lot, or would it just use the interior space?
No, there's space on the Broad Street side of the interior of the building, on the basement, excuse me, that is being planned as open space and common trees. So the thought was that we would configure that space, and the courts have concepts of how a community court physically should be presented. They have several concepts. So that's in the budget that we're requesting. We have to separate out the A&E fees for the project, and then plug it into the construction budget.
Well, look, you've got a
I got it.
discrepancy in the number. Which number is the true number?
The 400.
The 400, okay. Where this number, how does this number develop?
Based on square footage cost, renovation, and equipment for that space.
Okay.
Based on our models from upstairs. And we've had lengthy conversations about how this space would function as we've been working through, and that would segues into the next piece of what we're doing.
Okay.
But it's been thought out by the courts. It's a function of modern court judge. Would that be correct?
If there's such a concept, you know, the courthouse is the one building, and it's the one enterprise that hasn't changed a great deal in 200 years. If I took you back in time to 1823 and we walked into a courthouse, and then we visited a courthouse in 1923, went into a courthouse today in 2023, and then took a trip 100 years into the future, 2123, we're likely to see the same thing. There hasn't been a whole lot of innovation when it comes to the spatial designs of courthouses. That needs to change.
Okay.
Questions?
No.
Comments? That leads us to the next item, which is the proposed renovations on the first level, second level of the court. In the current design that was generated 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, the spaces have been deemed inadequate by this administration of the courts. We have a large courtroom. We have 2 large courtrooms on the first level. One courtroom has been deemed not necessary in the current concept. We have had a reorganization of the management of the court, which means we would like to reprogram the use of some of the spaces identified in the current design. That's how we got this to the, well, obviously, you know, we've been going back and forth with the architects and the contractors, and we got a price from the McDonald Group of $4.5 to $4.7 million, and then we got additional fees from the architects. redesign of that space. The courts would like to have this work done, but not at the risk of jeopardizing the current construction plans.
Mhm.
It's been made very clear to me that they would like to be back in this building as soon as possible because the VA is not working. Judge Jones, I can turn it over to you and Monique at this point.
I will second everything you said. You articulated our posture pretty accurately. This building has not been renovated since its initial construction in the 60s. So clearly it's in need of renovations, and damages from the two prior hurricanes have heightened the necessity. But every year the project is delayed, there are always going to be ideas or things that we want to do differently. But Mr. Lewis is correct. What we don't want to do is create any unnecessary delays. We've been without a courthouse, a functional courthouse for many years now. And the most important thing is to get it back on track. If we can make slight design changes that will not cause inordinate delays, then we would ask this body, this administration, to consider those small design changes.
Does this submission represent making the modifications within this current construction contract, or are we looking at, okay, maybe at a minimum white boxing and then coming back?
Yes, yes to both. Because the larger courtroom, the big courtroom on the first level,
Yeah.
we were talking about white boxing. And then we had a smaller court that we were talking about white boxing, so that we could accomplish some of the other objectives of the court. We're going to talk a little bit further because there are some specific needs for space on the first level. We were talking about some other uses like ONVD, which would be a part of the operation of the court. But we do need to reorganize some of the spaces because of the consolidation and the change in current personnel. So those spaces would be a little more straightforward. The big ask would be the chambers, the judges' chambers, which are not deemed adequate in square footage. There's an office space for the judges, which is relatively small, but bigger than what it was at the courts before. And then we have 4 staff persons per office. And it's going to be a tight fit. That's the bottom line. So as we look at the other spaces that are not being used in the court building, we can move folks around to allow for more space for the judges in their chambers. That would be an acceptable goal, an acceptable part of the project. Unfortunately, from our conversations with the architects and the contractors, they're asking for an inordinately high amount to make this change, which would add 6 months or more to the current construction project the way it's been bid. So we have to weigh that. And I've spoken to the judge, Robert and I, at length about what this means in this current project. And it's more important to get them back in the court, and they're potentially willing to live with the small chambers, and maybe make some of the smaller modifications.
Right.
Right. But that's going to be a discussion we have to work out programmatically.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
That's my take, Judge.
It's pretty good.
You trained me well.
Okay. Very well explained. I don't have any additional questions. And once again, just lastly, this number was based on the cost we got from the contractor.
And the architect.
Okay.
Okay. If we don't have anything else. I think
Thank
that
you
takes
for your
care of it.
consideration.
Thank you for your time. In terms of next steps, we're the next to last agency that will, will be heard for this process. We have one more department to hold a public hearing with. Then we'll begin developing the plan, which is submitted to the mayor for her consideration when she develops the capital budget. We'll present this plan to the city planning commission September 12th. It'll be public the week prior to that. And then, of course, the larger city budgeting process begins with city council, and you all are familiar with that. So, in the meantime, if you have any questions.
And also, I'll just add, I've been mentioning on several occasions, in this capital budget, we received over 170 project requests at a value of $2.2 billion. So, you guys are competing against $2.2 billion worth of other requests. So, Bill, I mentioned that to the departments just to make sure that you're thinking as you're submitting your request, you're being as comprehensive and strategic. It's almost wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. You're being strategic in how you're asking for your money, and but at the same time, you're adequately expressing the need for the ask, and if there are any opportunities, if you can bring resources to the table, if strategically your submission is being planned in a way that makes it less of a burden in terms of the ask, and typically for us with capital, if you're in a situation where you've got a project, okay, let's break out design and build, because it's easier to give you $500,000 than it is to give you $5 million. And at the same time, if you got plans in hand, then that puts you in a better position than someone that doesn't have plans. So we just want to make sure everybody is being, as thoughtful and strategic as possible in their ask. We've also brought the council into the process, which we haven't done in the past, so that twofold reasons. One, that they've got an understanding of what the process is and how it goes. And two, we're going to be getting this information to them sooner so that they've got a chance to go through it and look at it, and be more thoughtful, have a longer time to make considerations as they have to do. And, we've also been having discussions about, the council possibly including when they get into their annual, when they get into the budget process, they will be, every department has to go for the council and present their operating budget. And that's an opportunity for the council to ask to have you guys speak to your capital budget requests as well, because, nobody can carry your water better than you can. So, we're trying to just make this more comprehensive so that, it can be more thoughtful. There's more information that everybody is aware of as they're making decisions. So, that should make for a better process and better decisions as we move forward. And, as you guys are aware, we're having issues with pricing on the bids, and, we're dealing with that in the traffic court, and we're having to reallocate funds from other projects to fund, our critical projects, FEMA funded projects, grant projects, so that we don't lose that money. But if we are, the funding that we are reallocating from projects, we've committed to put that money back. We started the process of engaging a bond sale. The citizens passed a $500 million bond sale capacity in 2018, 2019. We sold 300 million, and we got sell. When we sold the 500 million, we actually had the capacity to sell, I think it was 800. So there may be an opportunity to increase the capacity of, the bonds that we will be selling, which would create, more opportunities for us as we are going through this capital budgeting process. And that's another thing. We haven't done a good job with aligning bond sales with capital budgets. Now this is as close as we ever come. So this is an opportunity as well to have a better understanding of, what our funding capacity is as it directly relates to, the projects that we have in the program. Yeah, that's some other information for you guys. Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.